this time, since I forgot to start the recording yesterday on time, so I apologize for that. Like I said, let's go ahead and get started if you all don't mind. So again, welcome back to day 2 of the Sumo Logic Post Illuminate Cert Jam. And again, my name is John Meredith, and I will be your instructor, just as I was yesterday. Still based in the United States on the East Coast. That hasn't changed. And as I mentioned before, when I turned my camera on, you can see it's still pretty dark out here. So it's about 5 minutes after 4 o'clock in the morning, and glad to be with you guys. So that is basically that. I'll turn off the video camera. And of course, I'm joined here by Alex, and Alex will be answering your questions. And Alex, is there anything you wanted to add before we get started?
I'll just turn on my camera just to show everyone I'm here and to say good morning and hello, and feel free to post your questions and I'll do my best to get them answered with John.
Super. Okay. So I'm just going to rehash some of the slides we saw yesterday with regards to, again, who's who in your team. And I think it's worthwhile to talk about, like I said, who, out in Europe, is part of your Sumo Logic team. So Steve, as we mentioned yesterday, is our Director of Customer Success. He's fairly new to Sumo, but certainly has a lot of experience in the realm of customer success. And Alex is also, again, on the in the EMEA side out of, I think you're out of the UK, correct, Alex?
I am indeed, London way, yeah.
Okay, so they're part of your local team. And like I said, I'm in the US, but I because I'm on the US, the other trainer we have is on the West Coast. So I wind up typically teaching a lot of the European classes because it's just more convenient for me time-wise than it is for my West Coast counterpart. So otherwise, and by the way, we're trying to hire another trainer in Australia. So if you know anybody who's a good trainer, feel free to let us know, and we will gladly like to meet that individual. So we're trying to add a third member to our team. So again, we mentioned yesterday about the value of certification. We have found that when customers take certification, they are more productive with the tool. Their success goes up with using Sumo. And so that's why we offer the training and the certifications for free, quite frankly. It's an enabler. We want you to be successful. And I hope you guys all feel good about taking your exams yesterday and, and going forward. So today we're going to do another course, another certification exam, and go from there. So again, geographically, where you all are spread out, across the EMEA region. And of course, I also noticed yesterday we had some folks from Nigeria and Kenya and stuff like that, which is great. But certainly, like I said, welcome to the class. One thing I am curious about, and that is, by a show of hands, if you would, how many of you are focused on security? Anybody here focused on security? Okay. All right, good. The reason I ask is because today's going to be all about security, okay? And so thank you very much, Alvin. And so we're going to talk a bit about security as far as things go today. We are going to do the course, Cloud Security Monitoring and Analytics. So again, we'll do a little, lecture lab type stuff. You're going to find that, yesterday I laid the foundation. So today, hopefully, we're able to go really focus in on the labs. And we're going to walk through some labs with some issues, with some building out some queries and seeing how those things go. Also, we are going to generate a dashboard today that if you want to, if you are running CloudTrail, AWS CloudTrail, you could probably take this dashboard and you can actually export it out, and you could probably import it into your environment. There's some changes you'll have to make, and we'll walk through those changes as we go through the labs. The other thing I want to do is I'm going to take a moment here and I'm going to talk about how our security offering is overall. And I'll even take a peek and show you where the Cloud SIM environment is, which is, of course, Alex's area of expertise, one of his areas of expertise. And so we'll talk a little bit about that as a whole. Again, I remind you that as we take the class today, if you take the certification exam and pass it, then you can, again, earn yourself an Uber Eats voucher. And I know I saw some emails yesterday with regards to that. And I saw Tram, who takes care of this on our end, respond back to those emails. So hopefully that's working well for you guys. But again, a chance to get some a meal on us. And again, if you get 6 certifications between now and the end of the year, you can also get this nifty backpack, the Sumo 6 certification. And my only concern about this is because you're in Europe or someplace. The only thing I'm concerned about here is that you may have to pay duty on it when we ship it to you. Just taxes, duty, import tax, whatever. And so that's something we can't control. Okay. But something to add to your repertoire and your wardrobe. So, and last comment here, and that is we have the upcoming EMEA event on the 19th and 20th of January. And again, we'll do the fundamentals class like we did yesterday. And then this time we'll do the observability fundamentals class. Also, if there's other classes that you would like us to do, as I said before, feel free to let Alex or Steve know, and we will gladly add them into the repertoire. Also, I suspect once we get past the holidays, we get into January and stuff like that, we'll start offering our full load of courses. So besides the EMEA Cert Jam, we'll also try to offer some training conducive to EMEA or the US East Coast that you guys are welcome to attend our virtual classes. And hopefully, like I said, we'll get back to face-to-face classes. So hopefully we can do a European road trip or something where we're doing a couple cities over a course of a week and do these classes face-to-face. And last comment here, and that is we have a nice Slack channel that you are welcome to join, our public-facing Sumo dojo that, like I said, you guys can join and put comments to and all that fun stuff. And that is the introduction to the Cert Jam. Are there any questions? We close that section up. And so let's get into today's material. Let me go ahead here and fire up my today's material. Now, this is our Sumo Security Monitoring and Analytics Certification class. That is quite a mouthful, okay? And so in this class, we're going to focus a little bit about what do we mean by security and the umbrella of our security products. And so we'll talk a little bit about security as a whole, and we'll break it on down. Additionally, then we're going to do a series of labs. And that's how we're going to spend the labs. That's what we're going to spend the day. I don't know if I'll take a break right after lab 5. I may take it a little earlier. But again, we'll go for about an hour. We'll take a break. We'll finish this up. Okay. And then, of course, you get a chance to take the certification exam. Okay. As always, if you guys have any questions, feel free to let us know. And again, I remind you that with Sumo Logic, you've got not only the ability to focus on security, but operational analytics, business intelligence, all that sort of thing, regardless of where your data is coming from, regardless of your role, you can obviously get that information into Sumo Logic, and you can then see basically how things are going for you in whatever area and focus you want to focus on. So make that easy. Okay. Here's the slide I want to start with. Okay. So when we think in terms of security and Sumo Logic, typically you can break it down in kind of 3 phases. The first phase is audit and compliance, right? You want to ensure that you're maintaining the compliance, the regulatory compliances that are required for European companies, protecting data, protecting privacy, and all that sort of thing. So you'll find that if we talked about yesterday, we've got a bunch of built-in apps. And if we do a search for audit and compliance, we'll see that we got a bunch of built-in apps that you can install and kind of see how you're doing with regards to audit and compliance. Okay. The second aspect of this is security analytics, and that's what we're going to focus on today. Here, we're going to create queries and do log searches and metric searches to see how we are doing with regards to security analytics. And then the third aspect of this is our Cloud SIM, our Security Information and Event Management product. And while we won't talk about this a lot today, I am going to peek and open up the covers for you so that you can see what this Cloud SIM is. And basically what it's doing is it's taking your log data that we typically have in Sumo Logic, and it's basically processing information, and it's extracting and enhancing the information so that we can get generate signals. And those signals are indicating when we have a a rule from the MITRE ATT&CK framework that indicates that we have a suspicious event or something worth noting. And then we're going to correlate those signals based on the entity, the who, the host name, the IP address, some identifier of who. And if we have a certain number of signals which score a certain value over a 2-week period, that generates an insight. And so this is automatically done for you. And then you and your security, your SOC team, Security Operations Center, can then investigate these abnormalities, issues, whatever, and resolve them. So I'm going to show you a little bit of the Cloud SIEM. And Alex, you're welcome to chime in, like I said, since this is your area of expertise. So let me stop for a second. And again, bear with me. I'll get you guys logged in just a minute, but I wanted to take a minute point where these 3 things are with regards to what's happening. So again, I've logged into Sumo Logic a little later on. I'll have you guys log into Sumo Logic as well. First order of business was that compliance and our dashboard. So again, we go back to our app catalog. And if we look here, there's a section for compliance and security. And you could install these apps, as we talked about yesterday, to ensure that you're maintaining your various compliance and security aspects. And as I said, you can focus on, a specific thing. Maybe I'll talk about Okta here. And here under Okta, I can look at my preview dashboards to see the kind of information I'm getting from these dashboards, seeing where my users are logging in, what type of operating systems, firewall traffic, all of that good stuff. So these are already pre-built for you. There's nothing that you or I have to do other than obviously we need the source for this information. We need the source coming into Sumo. But as you can see, we've got a lot of things here with regards to compliance and security. And then, of course, we've also got other things with regards to security and a wide variety of things. So that's the first aspect of this. The second aspect is the cloud security, analytics, and monitoring. And that's what we're going to focus on. So I'm going to come back to that. That's going to be our conversation for the next 2 hours and 45 minutes, or almost 2 hours. And then the third part is the Cloud SIEM. So here in our main menu, you can click on Cloud SIEM. And by the way, you could use the same account you used yesterday to log in and click on this Cloud SIEM. So what we're looking at here over the last 24 hours, and I can change the time range if I want, I'm seeing that we've ingested over 632,000 records from our various logs and from our various systems. From that, it has generated about 2,000 signals. So this blue area out here are our records. These columns, these light blue columns here are our signals. And then these signals are getting correlated to see if we're generating insights. And that's what these red triangles are. And these red triangles are things that we need to concern ourselves with. And I could click on any one of these to see that particular insight, or here is the latest insight, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. And then down here, I've kind of got a system log where I can see who's been, within the environment here, who's been moving things from, say, an open insight to a in progress, or what, it's kind of a sys log as far as what's happening here. I could also go into here and I can look at my insights, specifically the various insights and stuff that I have. And again, I can look and see what these things are telling me. So these insights, like I said, are basically fired off based on signals, and those signals are correlated with something called the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So good news, none of this is going to be on today's exam, okay? But this is how and it's a very powerful tool that we have that is going to allow you to see that we have a device IP matched a Intel file hash. So we've detected a file hash based on its hash that is a threat, that we know there's something malicious about that file. So that's one signal. And then we have another issue with the user receiving a phishing an email with a phishing link, and that's another signal. And these are all connected together by a specific entity, this particular IP address. So it's really telling us a story here of what's going on. And so now we can investigate this, and we can see, you know, what IP address it is and where it's trying to go to. And we can basically see what's happening here, and we can investigate this, and you guys can troubleshoot this. So if you don't have a solution like this, it is something I think to consider, because it is going to save you a lot of time with regards to understanding how secure is your environment and how things are working. Alex, is there anything you would like to add, sir?
No, I think you did an excellent overview of it. I don't know if there's any questions from anyone that maybe we could just do a quick impromptu Q&A on.
Sure. Or are there any questions? And I see a bunch of folks have joined, so let me enable your microphone so you can ask your questions. Okay. One other thing I want to mention to you here, besides this nifty Cloud SIM, which again is security, information, and event management, we also have a SOAR component, a Cloud SOAR component, which will allow us to provide automation into this process. And so we'll be creating some training with regards to that very soon. There's actually a course for this that's out, actually 2 courses for this, 2 certification courses. But again, right now it's not in our plan to teach today, but there are 2 courses here. There's a call a fundamentals class for the analyst, the SOC analyst, and then there's an administrator class for the person who administers this environment. So just wanted to make you all aware of that. And if I want to go back from here to my regular Sumo environment, I can just click on that. Takes me back into my Sumo Logic environment, and then we are going to get back to our slides and resume our game plan for today. But before I do that, again, I want to make a last minute pass, see if there are any questions about the Cloud SIM. A lot of our customers are really excited about it, and just want to make sure you guys are aware it is part of our offer. So any questions before I focus on today's material? All right, then I will focus on today's material. So as I mentioned, let me go back a slide if you don't mind. This area right here is our focus for today. And so when we think about security analytics, we're thinking about creating searches, taking the results of those searches and building those into dashboards, and then as well as using some advanced analytics. We mentioned yesterday briefly something about log reduce, where it combines my like log messages, and we have an outlier function, and we've got a bunch of advanced analytics that you and I and others can take advantage of. Okay. And so that's really going to be our focus for the next hour and 35 minutes. Okay. I'm going to come back to this demo in just a little bit, but, and actually, whoa, I didn't realize this didn't get updated. Sorry about that. The password here needs to be updated. I'm the one that usually updates these slides, and I'm surprised I missed this. But what we'd like you to do is, just like yesterday, we'd like you to log into fire up Google Chrome or Firefox and go to service.sumologic.com. And pick a 3-digit number. You can use the same 3-digit number you used yesterday if you'd like. And you're going to log in as training plus analyst with that 3-digit number at sumologic.com. And then the password is security21 exclamation mark with a capital S. So what we'd like you to do is go ahead and log into the environment. And if you would, when you get logged in, if you'd raise your hand, let me know that you're in, safe and sound. I'd appreciate it. Thank you, Florian. Thank you, Vincent. Thank you, Zaniska. And by the way, if I mispronounce somebody's name, I do apologize. So want to make sure everybody gets a chance to get logged in here. All right, now, while you guys are logging in, I'm going to take advantage of the time. Yep, that's great. Thanks, Alva. I'm going to take advantage of the time here, and I'm going to do a little demonstration. In our training environment, I really don't have a good demo environment here to play with, but I have access to other systems, and I have a Sumo Logic demo environment here that I can use. So I'm going to switch to that Sumo Logic demo environment, and let's talk a little bit about Sumo Logic and a security example here. So bear with me a moment. That's not what I'm looking for. There we go. Actually, let's try this one. There we go. Oh, AWS. Okay, good. So here, ladies and gentlemen, we have built a dashboard. And this is just an example of a security overview. Now, again, you can't do this with me because I'm in a different environment. I'm not in the training environment. I'm in a demo environment. Okay, so just watch if you would. So here I can see where users are logging in from. So throughout your organization, you can see where your users are logging in from. And if you're a worldwide organization, probably makes sense that people are logging in from the world. If you're a regional organization or a specific maybe a European organization, and you've got folks logging in from, say, the United States or maybe from China or something like that, that you don't have employees there, then maybe little alarm bells want to go off in your head, right? Something's going on. Additionally, I can also take the IP addresses that they're logging in from, and we can look up any malicious activity associated with those IP addresses. So here I can see I have some IP addresses that have a high confidence, high malicious confidence, and they've tried to access our IP address 122 times. So now I got to look at that IP address and investigate and see where it's going and that sort of thing. Additionally, over here, I have a query where I can see that a user within 3 hours has logged in from an IP address, which is in the United States, and they've logged in from another IP address, which is from Egypt. Now, hopefully you realize, like I do, that 3 hours going from the United States to Egypt is a little far-fetched. We refer to this as kind of an impossible travel situation, okay? And so little alarm bells may want to see if maybe this user's account has been compromised, or maybe they did log in through a VPN or something, and that did redirect them to, either the United States or Egypt, depending on what's going on. But the point is, we can write a query that within a specified period of time, we can see if somebody logs in from a geographic location, 2 different geographic locations that, quite frankly, they shouldn't be able to do. So this is an example, and this is stuff that we'll build in this class. I can see my data volume here by my S3 buckets, and again, I can, if I want to here, filter out, specific data. I can select specific data here if I want to. I can see my AWS guard duty logs if you happen to have AWS guard duty, and you see what those logs are trying to tell you. I can look at my VPC, my data flow, and what this is an outlier diagram. So here's my actual data. My line is my actual data. The cloud behind the line is based on a calculation, how many standard deviations. So based on my traffic, it figures there's a certain amount of flow that you might have. And then I can see these red triangles, and if I move my cursor out of the way, hopefully you can see those red triangles a little bit better. Those indicate outliers. Those are just statistical outliers that indicate that you've got a certain amount of traffic where you shouldn't have that volume of traffic. And then I can also see my firewall traffic here as well. And I can see my anti-malware event history, how many again, this is a timeline here. I can see how many files we've quarantined, how many files we've identified, how many files we've cleaned, to get a sense for malware, to see how things are happening. Now, again, just so you don't panic here, this is all fictitious data for us. And so we're going to have some malware attacks. We're going to have some issues. We're going to have this sort of thing. Hopefully, if you had a dashboard like this, you're not going to see a whole lot of activity. Hopefully your company is all safe and secure and life is good. But for us, it tells a better story if we have some, some suspicious login activity, and we have some threats, and we have some malware activity and stuff like that. So any questions about the demo here? All right, I'm going to go back to the training environment. So I'm in the same environment that you are in. And again, I want to remind you that we need to go out and we need to grab our labs. But before I grab my labs, I want to point out and remind you also where our community is. So if you're logged into the training environment, and from any Sumo Logic environment, could be your company environment, could be the training environment, that makes no difference. If you click on help, and if you click on community, again, if you search for the word slides, SLIDES, you'll see that when you search for slides, you have this lovely page. And again, I remind you that this is all of our certification courses, a link to the labs, a link to the recording of a class, the link to the slides. Okay. So I mentioned that we've got that new Cloud Sim class. There's the information about it. Here's the Cloud Sim administration class. If I scroll down here a little bit more, here is the class that we're going to take right now, Cloud Security Monitoring and Analytics. So I could click on this to take me to my labs. I could listen to a recording of this class, and of course I could see the slides here. Now, another way of getting to the labs is that I can go into our documentation. So if I go back to Sumo and I click on my documentation, in our documentation here, under the first chapter, there is this Quick Start Labs and Tutorials. And in this Quick Start Labs and Tutorials, there is this hands-on labs, Cloud Security Monitoring and Analytics. What a mouthful. And these are the labs that we are going to do today. These lovely labs right here. So I'm going to go ahead and pin that down. I suggest you do the same. By the way, if you need me to, I'll copy this and put this in the chat box. And I will also take that community page and I will copy that and paste that in as well, just to make things easy for you. Okay. But I need, you need, we need access to our Sumo Logic training environment, which I'm going to pin down, and we need our labs. Now, one little thing, again, the class that we're going to go through and the certification exam that you're going to take is all about these labs and this material. Okay. But I realize that some of you may not be running an AWS environment. So bear with me a second here while I boost that up. And if you're not running an AWS environment, maybe you're on Azure. We do have a section of labs here that we wrote that basically do the same sort of thing, except now they do it in an Azure environment. And this is also available in our training environment. So my point is that if you're an Azure shop and you want to practice with Azure, you've got a series of labs here that you can use. If you're an AWS environment, you can, of course, use our Cloud Security Monitoring and Analytics labs and go through those labs as well. And for the exam, again, this will cover these 8 labs and the contents therein. So any questions before we start digging in? All right. So again, here we are in the first lab here. Again, it's going to talk about an overview of what we're going to do. Kind of give us a little sense here for the labs, and there's a little introduction section here, and how we are going to write some queries to detect, investigate, and respond to various things. You and I are going to build the dashboard, and we are going to do these labs and subsequently build the dashboard. So we're going to start with good old lab 1. We're going to talk about monitoring user activity. And we're going to start going through this lovely lab. So any questions before we start digging in and going through the lab? I'm going to take that as a no then. All right. So our game plan here, should we decide to accept it, is we want to see our top 10 AWS activity based on our users. And so we're going to use our AWS CloudTrail information here. So we're going to start building out this query. Now, you could, I could, we could take this code that's right here, we could copy it and paste it, but I want to tell you where this code is coming from and why this code is here. So I'm going to go out here to Sumo Logic, and I'd like you to do the same. And I'm going to go ahead and grab a new log search query. And I want to grabbing information from my CloudTrail data. So I'm going to use the metadata tag source category equals. And then I'm going to go grab my CloudTrail data, which is labs/AWS/ and you'll notice as I start doing this, I start getting choices. And I want the CloudTrail data. And just for fun here, I'm going to go ahead and run the little switch there. And so I want to see my CloudTrail information. Now, a couple of things. I'm looking by default here at the last 15 minutes. I'm actually going to change that to 60 minutes. I want to see 60 minutes worth of log data in all of my queries. 60 minutes of log data. Here I have a histogram, which shows me the number of messages I have across my timeline over the last 60 minutes. So that's what this histogram tells me. And as you may recall from yesterday, I see that I've got 10,638 messages results here. And, it's done. The query is done and took a second. But down here, of course, I can see my messages. And for those of you who are keen of eyesight, and if those of you not keen of eyesight, let me help you out here a little bit. Let me see if I can't magnify my screen here a little bit, make it a little easier for you to read, make it easier for me to read, quite frankly. You'll notice that these are in JSON, okay? These log messages are in JSON. And one of the cool things about JSON is that when we encounter a JSON source, we automatically parse these JSON fields into our field browser. You may recall yesterday, I introduced you guys to the field browser. So over here in my messages tab on the left is my field browser. And so every one of these fields, when we encounter a JSON log, we automatically parse out these fields. So down here, if I scroll down, all of the fields I see here, I am seeing over here. So for example, I can click on event name and it pops up and talks about all the different types of event names that we have. I can go down here, let's see if I can find AWS region. I can click on that and I can see all my different AWS regions and their values. US East 1, US West 1, whatever. And of course I can see, here's my AWS region, here's my event name, here's my event type, but these are automatically made available to me. Now, how does that happen? By default in Sumo Logic, if I go up here to this gear icon, there's this auto parse mode switch and it's set to on. If I turn this off and I rerun this query, I suddenly have lost all of my fields. Well, my fields are gone. Still some there, but most of them are gone. And so what happens is by default, with this switch, this auto parse switch mode on, whenever we encounter JSON logs, we automatically parse out their fields. And so you can, I can, we can go in here, and if we want to select AWS region, I can check mark it. If I want to grab event ID, or event name, I can check mark it. And so I can now see these fields pulled out. Okay. So that's how those fields came into my field browser. I'm going to turn those off for right now. Okay. Now, before we had the ability to auto parse JSON, the way we used to parse these fields out, so if there was a field in here that I wanted, and let me go back to my exercise. So what I want to do here is I want to grab event type and I want to grab source IP. So bear with me a second. So I'm going to find my event type. Here's my event type down here. If you want to ensure that that field is parsed out, you can, I can, we can click on it, right click on it and say parse selected key. And it will then add this code up here and it will then parse it out. And it will call it, again, by its name of event type. So it's parsed it out, it's pulled it out. Now, one of the things that I can do is I can add an as clause and I can call it whatever I want. Event, maybe I want to call it event underscore type. And so now you'll notice I've changed the field name to event underscore type. And I can see that value. Additionally, under user ID, hang on a second. Not all user IDs have a username. So let me do this. Let me grab my source IP address because that's in all of my messages. Source IP address, right click, parse selected text. And again, I'm going to call this as source underscore IP. So I'm extracting out the different fields that I'm interested in. Now, as I said before, I could take this lovely line of code, whoops, excuse me, this lovely line of, okay, one more time. I just want that one line, thank you. I can copy that code and I can paste that information in here. And so what I'm doing here is, again, I'm extracting out these fields. So I have who the user is, their name, I call it actor, their event type, and their source IP. And let me just check source IP. Okay, we call it SRC IP, excuse me. So let me change that. You can call it anything you want. I'm just going to try to stick to the book here a little bit. And so now I see my respective fields. And so this is the start of a query. So again, here's my source of my data. And then here are the three fields that I'm interested in right now. Any questions so far? Okay. So in this lab, it's proceeding to tell you how, again, it automatically parses all these fields, but we can manually parse them by selecting parse selected key. And so we grab the various fields that we want. I also want to grab event name. So let me go ahead and grab event name and add that to my mix here as well. Parse selected text. There we go, event name. And I believe I want to call it as event underscore name. So here I've got my actor, event name, event type, source IP. Again, these are listed alphabetically. If I want to, I can use the fields command to change the order. And we'll see that a little later in the course. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to filter and I want to create some parameters. So I want to basically add a where clause. And so I'm going to do something like this. Pipe where event underscore type, which is this field right there, right? Actually, let me make sure I get the case right, just to be precise. Where event type, and I'm going to do a string match, matches And then I'm going to put whatever I want to here. And the convention that we tend to use is we call it the same name. Now, what we want to do is we want to create a parameter. We want to be able to let the user specify what event type that they want. So I could call this anything I want to. And when you want to create a parameter, there's two ways to do it. One way is, you'll notice that if I click, I'm trying to click around here, there we go. If I click, there's nothing selected here. I don't see any information on this gray border. Now, if I swipe over the word event type, now I see there's an option here that says create a parameter. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to swipe over this whole thing, event type here. And I'm going to click create a parameter. And it's going to turn this into a parameter. What do I want to call this parameter name? I'm going to call it event type. That's what I want to call the parameter name. And then here I can specify the default value. And for the default value, I'm going to specify a star. The reason is a star is a global wildcard, means show me everything. And when I click save, this now adds this field here, my parameters for my event type, and it has a star. And when I run this, I now see, or should see, all of my event types. Hang on a second. Why is that? Why am I not seeing my? Oh, there we go. Sorry. I made a typo there. There we go. Much better. All right. So now what I'm seeing here is I have the ability to specify an event type. So you notice my event type, I have AWS API call, I have AWS console login, I have a couple of other values here. I can, if I want to take, excuse me, I can take this information, I can copy it, I can replace this, I can now run it, and only shows me those event types. So I have filtered it down. I'm looking at only 2,000 messages for that specific event type. If I replace it with a global wildcard, I'm seeing all my AWS event types. I'm seeing over 2,700 messages here. So this is creating a parameter. Now, what I obviously want to do later is I want to fix this so that when I backspace over this, I see a pick list of my choices. So I want to create a lookup that's going to give me a lookup of my choices of my event type. And we'll show you how to do that a little later on in the exercise. So stay tuned. So we have created our first parameter for event type. Now, two ways to create a parameter. You can type in your code, swipe over the field, and then create your parameter like you saw me do. Click on this, create my parameter. The other way that I create a parameter, it's a little easier, is to go ahead and start creating the code. Okay. So what I want to do here is I want to take my actor and I want to filter by my actor. So I'm going to add a second where clause, this time where actor matches. And this time I'm going to create my parameter automatically. I'm not going to swipe over it and click on that create parameter link. I'm going to type in 2 brackets, whatever I want to call this parameter name, and 2 brackets. That automatically creates my parameter over here. And then I'm going to go into my parameter settings. And in my parameter settings, there's my parameter name. I'm going to specify my default value, which in my case is going to be a star. And it's going to be a string here that I'm going to match on. And so now when I run this, I'm looking at all of my event types and all of my actors. I notice one of my actors' names here is Kevin. I'm going to swipe on Kevin. By the way, notice here I've got like about 2,798 messages. I'm going to replace this star, and I only want to filter and see Kevin's activity. Now I'm down to 771 messages, and they only show me information about Kevin. So parameters are very, very handy. In fact, you can close this up and show your users only an interface where they get to pick their parameters. And once I get this thing set up with a lookup, a drop down where they can select what the values are, it makes it even easier. So this is creating parameters, and you and I can create parameters very easily by just typing in the code. Typing in the code. Okay. There you go. So that basically is that so far. Now, while we've got this information, we want to count by our actor, our event type, and our event name. So I'm going to take this line of code, excuse me, this single line of code. Let's try that again, John. Tell you what. Count by actor, event type, event name. And so now when I run this, that count by creates this aggregates tab. And here in this aggregates tab, I can now see by my actor, by my event type, by my event name, how many counts of that activity they have over the last 60 minutes. Now, what I can also do, and what I'm actually going to do, is I'm actually going to apply a top function. So I don't want to see everybody. I only want to see the top 10 actors based on the event type and based on the event count. So I'm going to take this information and add my pipe because I didn't copy the pipe. Paste that information in. And this is now going to filter and only let me see my top 10. It's going to restrict it to only 10 values. And then I'm going to do a transpose. You may recall from yesterday the transpose will put specific things in my row, put specific things in my columns. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to transpose in my row. I want actor. In my column, I want event type. And what that's going to do is going to create a pivot type table. So here are my actors. Here are my different event types. And here are my respective counts. Why are we doing this? So that we can create some sort of a bar chart, area chart, whatever kind of chart we want. So we can see that this particular user did an AWS console sign-in log, but they also did a series of API calls. Now, maybe they're supposed to use API calls, maybe they're not. In the case of Joe Schmo here, Joe Schmo only did AWS console sign-in logs. But now I can see where my users, what type of logins are they trying to do here? And over the last 60 minutes, how many of them did that? If you look here, Kevin's got over 280 logins, 80 API calls. Now, maybe Kevin's a developer and he's testing something out. Maybe that makes sense. Maybe that's high. Maybe Kevin's not a developer. But we can now see this kind of information. So any questions so far about what we've built? All right. So what I want to do here is, hang on, something scrolling down here. Again, we created our little chart here. By the way, we can go into our chart properties. So over here in our settings, we can go into our chart properties and we can change the colors. We can change various other properties associated with this graph, this visualization. Depending on what type of graph you are looking at, depends on what your choices are, okay? So just so you're aware, it depends on what type of chart and visualization you are dealing with, okay? So if I want to make it red, I can certainly make it red if I want to. In fact, I'll make it red since the book wants me to make it red. So I'm going to go in here to my properties, I'm going to choose red, and voila, there's my shades of red. Okay. Okay. Somebody asked the question, can we just change the color of just Kevin's data? You can do some conditional formatting, but typically it's done by value of range. So it's not, I don't want to filter just Kevin's data. Maybe I want, if it's over a certain value or less than a certain value, those are the ones that I want to see. Some sort of conditional colors, that's where you would do that. So to answer your question more succinctly, can I focus on Kevin? No, but I can focus on based on the values. So if it's, under a certain number, I have it in green, over a certain number, I have it in red, that you can do. A good question. Thanks for asking. Make sure everybody's mics are enabled as we got a couple folks who joined us. So welcome, folks. We're doing a series of exercises here today, so no problem. Thanks for asking. So now one thing I want to do is back to my parameters. We created this parameter, and what I want to do is I want to create the lookup for it. Now, I'm going to show you actually how to create the lookup later, but in one case, we already have the lookup created. So here for my event type, we created a lookup table for it. And like I said, I'm going to show you where that lookup table is later in the course. And we're actually going to go ahead and create these lookup tables for active. But for right now, we've already created the lookup table. So what I want to do is for my event type, I want to modify my parameter properties. And I want to specify here on step 13 of lab 1, where it says here, shared event types. Don't grab the period, but swipe over this and copy this. And what we're going to do is I'm going to go into my parameter here for event type. I'm going to modify my parameter settings. And down here is where we can set the values for our parameters. So I'm going to open that up. Now, a couple of choices. One, I can actually type in text entries here if I want to. I can also use label value pairs. So I can specify a label, I can specify values. I can type that in myself. Or I can use a lookup. Now, if I start typing in here and type with a slash, and I start looking at shared, the IntelliSense kind of gives me an idea of, what my choices and stuff are here. And we can see we've had lots of good stuff here that people have created. Earlier, I copied and pasted that. So what I want to do here is grab my shared / event types. In fact, if I get rid of my event types and I start typing in EVNT, there's my event types. And then if I scroll down here, it's going to go find that lookup file, and it's going to see what values or what fields it has that it can display. And if I click on this, there's a field called event type that I want to display. So I'm going to select that field event type. I'm going to save this. What we've done here, what the result of this is going to be, is now when I go to event type and I backspace over my star, I get a pick list. These are my different event types. And now your user can pick one or the other, or even a star if they want to. So if I backspace over this, again, I got my pick list, and they can filter and see what's going on here. And I'm going to put my star back. So I can see both of those. So that's basically what we've done. We've included a property. We've modified this. So we've got incorporated a lookup table. All right. Now, the last thing that we have to do in this lab is we are going to take and we are going to create a dashboard. We're going to create a Security Operations Center dashboard, a SOC dashboard. And so when we create this dashboard, we're going to name our dashboard SOC underscore with our initials. And then if you want to throw in a 3-digit number, you can. Maybe the 3 digits that you're using for your account, whatever you want. So we're going to go in, as you may recall from yesterday, we're going to say add the dashboard. And we're going to give this panel a name. And the name that they want us to give this panel is top 10 user activity. So I'm going to swipe over that. I can copy that and I can paste that in. So we've created a query that's showing us our top 10 user activity. And then here, they want us to type in SOC underscore our initials, and then maybe a 3-digit number. In my case, I'm actually going to make it a 4-digit number. I'm going to make it today's date, but that's me. And that then asked me to create a new dashboard. So I'm going to create a new dashboard. Now, you may recall yesterday, I pointed out that when you create a new dashboard, by default, it's going to put you in the new dashboard user interface. Normally, I would play with that today, except that parameters is one of the areas that we have not fixed for the new dashboard interface. So for this exercise and for today, we're going to turn this off. We're going to use the old legacy dashboards. Okay. So I'm going to switch that off, and I want you to make sure you switch it off. And then we're going to go ahead and add and create our new dashboard. So when we click add, it's going to add it to our personal folder. So again, here in my personal folder, if I look, SOC, there it is. There's my new dashboard that I just created. And here is my dashboard. And as we talked about yesterday, I can make it bigger, smaller, whatever the heck I want to do. Now, one cool thing, those parameters we have a filters icon. And up here in my filters icon, I can go to my event type. I can backspace over it. Again, I get my pick list. I can pick the values that I want. And now that affects this particular dashboard. If I had other dashboards on here with the same field names, it would affect those as well. So that's why we can use these parameters. Okay. Now I'm going to do something. I want to show you what's going on here. So bear with me a second. I don't want you to do this, but I'm going to show you something here real quick. I'm going to add the dashboard again. I'm going to call this my top 10 user activity. I'm going to call this scrap, my initials, just so I can create a new dashboard here. And if I create this in the new dashboard user interface and I click add, I'm going to come clean here. This creates a new dashboard and it wasn't able to deal with the parameters. That's why we had to go back to the legacy dashboard. Our new dashboards that we came out with 8 months ago have a lot of cool functionality and have a lot of neat things. 2 things they don't have yet: the ability to go to live mode. Remember that live mode we talked about yesterday. And they also don't have the ability to handle parameters yet. So once we get those things fixed, which we should be doing in the next quarter or so, then we'll start really focusing on those new dashboards. So I wanted you to know why I'm not using the new dashboards. And that, ladies and gentlemen, I believe takes care of lab number 1. So that takes care of lab number 1, and we've got a few more labs to go ahead and do. Now, one thing I do want to do here, I want to take a moment and I want to go through these quizzes because they may be helpful in preparing you for the exam. So says something about JSON field equals raw source IP is source IP. This is going to extract the source IP and its subsequent values as they appear in the incoming messages. Is that statement true or false? Is that what it does? What do you think? Put it in the chat box. Does this statement extract out that field? And again, if it helps you, it's this statement right here, right? That same statement in our query that we put in there. And it did extract out our IP address, right? So that statement is true. All right. So question number 2, double curly brackets enclose a variable label are used to create parameters. So you may recall when we created our parameters, the second one I created, I just typed in the brackets, the double curly brackets, and that did in fact create our parameter. That statement is also true. And then I use the settings icon in the messages tab to change the color of the bar graph. Be careful here. In the messages tab, there is no settings icon. Well, actually there's a gear icon, but that's not how you change the color. You do it from the aggregates tab. So in the aggregates tab, not the messages tab, the aggregates tab, here's where you can change the property and change the color. So that statement is false. So question number 3 is false. Any questions about lab number 1? Okay. Tell you what, folks, I got about 5 after the hour. What do you say we take a 10-minute break real quick? So let me fire up my little 10-minute timer here. And when this timer gets down to 0, come on back. So please take a 10-minute break. I'll see you back here in about 9 minutes and 53 seconds. Have a good break, folks. Hey folks, it's John. Welcome back. So hopefully you all had a nice break and you had a chance to fill up your coffee mugs, tea mugs, juice mugs, whatever you're consuming. And we're going to move on to lab number 2. So again, those of you who joined us a little bit late, we are doing the hands-on labs, the cloud security monitoring and analytics portion. And we're just going to basically walk through these labs. And we just finished up lab number 1. So here in lab number 2, what we're going to do is we're going to use the mapping capability so we can see where our users are logging in from. Okay. And you'll notice, by the way, that when we look at this particular query, this particular exercise, we're basically doing the same thing we did before. All right. We're going after CloudTrail data. We're grabbing some fields here. So I'm going to take this code that's right here. And I'm going to, by the way, they want to change this to 24 hours. So I'm going to change it to 24 hours. But I'm going to take this code and I am going to copy this code and I'm going to create a new log search. And again, I'm going to go back here for 24 hours. And I'm going to paste my code in. There we go. And I'm going to run this to make sure it works. So again, same thing we did before, right? Going after our CloudTrail data, specifying some specific fields that we want, the actor, the event type. In this case, we want to get the result. Were they successful? Were they failed? Were they, did they able to get logged in? And of course, we want their IP address, the source IP. So that's basically what we're doing there in step 2. And we're looking at the results here in step 3, making sure everything runs. Then we want to add those parameters again, okay? So we're going to filter and create parameters. Now, what we want to do here is we're going to check and see if the value for the actor, the user, or the event type are empty. And they want to make sure they're not empty. So that's what these where exclamation mark is empty statements are. We're basically making sure that they're not empty. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to add this to our end of our code. Again, always a good idea to code a little bit, test a little bit. So let me run this, make sure I'm still getting my data. And then we want to add our parameters. We talked about how we add those parameters before, but basically if I type this information in as it is, it'll automatically generate my parameters. Let me paste that information in. You'll notice that my parameters automatically got created because I use this double curly bracket type notation. I do need to go in here and I do need to go into my settings and specify that my default value here is going to be a star. Star is a wildcard and it means give me everything. Okay. And I'll run this and make sure I get results. So as you can see, this code is very similar to the last exercise we've had so far before. Now we're going to do something a little different. Now we're going to use a lookup command. So what this lookup command does, and let me do this. Let me go ahead and click on this. Let me open this up in a new tab. This is going to go out and go look at our documentation. And it's going to do our lookup command here. And our lookup commands, we can do lots of things. We can look up, look up things from a file. We can do a geo lookup. We can do all kinds of fun stuff. In fact, probably a better way of looking at this is doing, if I do a search for geo lookup. And what happens here when I do a geo lookup to display a map is that we have a partnership with a company called Newstar. And basically, if we pass Newstar an IP address, Newstar will give us the latitude and the longitude of that. In order to render this as a map, I need 3 things. I need latitude, I need longitude, and I need a count. Then I can render a map. Additionally, I may want other things like country code, country name, region, postal code, that sort of thing. But in order to generate a map, I only need 3 things: latitude, longitude, and count. So this command here, this lookup command, is basically, and the way you read this lookup command is you start at the end. So I'm going to pass in the source IP as IP, and I'm going to go to this URL, which is basically send it to Newstar. And Newstar is going to provide me my latitude, my longitude, my country name, my city, my region, all of that good stuff. So I'm going to copy this, and I am going to paste this and add this to my query. And I'm going to run this. Now, you will notice that it has now added, besides my actor and all stuff, provides me a city, country name, all of this good stuff down here. Let me get rid of this so you can see more information. My latitude, my longitude for where these users and stuff are logging in from. Now what I want to do is I want to do a count. I want to count that information. Because remember, I need a count besides a latitude and longitude. So in step 8, we are adding I want to count by my latitude, my longitude, my actor, and all that stuff. Now, before I add this line in, I do want to point something out. I don't have the ability to grab and do a map here. I can only do a map from my aggregates tab, not my messages tab. So the way I get an aggregates tab is I can either do a count or a sum or a min or a max. Once I use that count operator, now I get an aggregates tab, and on that aggregates tab, I have a map icon. And when I click on this map icon, it now shows me the map of the world and starts showing me data information here. And if I want to here, I can double click and I can drill into some of these areas and break out some of these numbers. Or if I want to here, I can zoom back out. So basically we need, in order to generate this map, we need latitude, longitude, and count. All right. Then I am going to insert this into my existing dashboard. So I want to add this to my dashboard. And this is going to be called my, the panel is going to be called my my Cloud Trail Geo of sign-in activities. Let me copy that. Let me go out here. I want to add this to my dashboard. I'm going to paste this as my panel name. And then I want to specify the name of my dashboard from earlier. So I believe I typed SOC, my initials, and then I used today's date. Hang on a second. Why am I not seeing my dashboard? Hang on a second. Should be, oops. Give me a second. There it is. The SOC. Oh, I see. I put an underscore in there. That's why. So let me go out there and grab it again. Paste this. SOC underscore JWM. There we go. And I want to add this to my dashboard. So now when it goes to add it to the dashboard, it gets this message. It says, wait a second, these parameter names already exist. Do you want the parameter names to be the same, or do you want them to be different? If I want them to be the same, and I do, I'm going to click Add Panel. If I want the names to be different because they represent different parameters, I can then rename the search parameters. But remember, we've already got a parameter in there called event type, and we've got one called actor. So I'm going to click Add Panel. This is going to add this to this dashboard. Let me spread it out and give it some more room. And again, as I mentioned before, now I can go into my filter, and particularly with my event type, I can swipe over this and I can pick what event type I want, and it automatically filters my dashboards accordingly. So hopefully you're starting to get an idea of how these parameters can help you and your users by filtering things. Now, we did this lookup that where we get the values, that pull down. We did that in lab 1. We have not done a lookup yet for actor. So if I get rid of the star, I don't see anything yet. We're going to fix that in an upcoming lab in just a minute or two. Actually, more than a minute or two, probably about 20 minutes. But we're now adding more and more things to this dashboard. Any questions about lab 2? Couple of quiz questions here. It says lookup uses the CrowdStrike data to provide latitude and longitude. No, it uses the NewStar data to provide latitude and longitude. You're going to find out later that we have a partnership with CrowdStrike where you can take an IP address and look it up on CrowdStrike to get malicious threat information. And that's very valuable because normally CrowdStrike costs thousands of dollars for you to have that capability. With Sumo Logic, that product that is available for you. So one of the last labs we'll see is a CrowdStrike lookup where I can see if an IP address has malicious intent or what actor it's from. You know, is it a nation state actor? You know, bad country out there, a threat to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that sort of thing. So question number 1, the answer is false. Question number 2, I can display a map without aggregating data. What do you guys think? Is that true or false? Can I display a map without aggregating data? Why don't you put something in the chat box, please? Let me know. Yeah, yep. Folks say false. That is absolutely correct. Good job. Good job. And then 3, I can use add panel to add to my existing dashboard. And of course, we all know that that's true. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to add the dashboard. I'm sorry, excuse me. I can use add panel to add to an existing dashboard. You can use add panel up here to add to an existing dashboard, but it only gives you a text and title panel. Okay. In this case, in the new dashboards, it will give you the ability to create a whole new query and a whole new dashboard, a whole new panel and all that stuff. But in this case, so sorry about that. So you technically statement number 3 is true. I don't like the question. I think I would modify it going forward. So let's move on to lab 3 now, and let's talk about, I want to see the top 10 failed login attempts. That's what I want to see. And just like with lab 1 and lab 2, we're going to start with basically the same information over and over and over again. So here in step 3, I'm going to take this code. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to create a new query. Paste it in here. I'm going to go back 24 hours. And I'm going to run this. So again, I'm looking at my CloudTrail data, my AWS CloudTrail data. I've specified certain fields that I want to see here. Now I want to add my parameters. So again, I'm going to copy this code. Again, I want to specify event type. I want to specify event filter. So I'm going to copy those, paste that in here at the end of my query. And it creates my parameters. But again, I need to go in here and specify my default value for each of my parameters. And my default value is always a star. It's my wild card. Now, I say always. It could be something different, but more than likely you want to see all of your values, which means you're going to use a star here. Okay. And that seems to run just fine. Now that we want to do here is we want to add some filters. We want to make sure things aren't empty. And because what I'm trying to do is see the top 10 users who's logged in, who's failed to log in, I want to make sure that the result is equal to failure and where the event type is equal to AWS console sign-in. So again, I'm going to add this code in here. Add it here to the end. Okay. So here I'm specifically want to filter out any, I don't want to see success. I only want to see failures. And I only want to see where the AWS console sign-in is. I don't want to see the API calls. So I'm filtering the things out. Now, because I am filtering out for AWS console sign-in, I really don't need this event type parameter, right? It doesn't really do anything for me. I'm only looking for one event type, okay? So it really isn't very practical to have that parameter in there, but for right now, we'll go ahead and leave it in. Okay. And so it's processing here. And now what we want to do is we want to add a time slice operator. You may recall we used the time slice operator yesterday. Excuse me, to break things up into buckets. And we're going to break our time slices up into 1 hour buckets. So since we're looking at 24 hours, we'll have 24 buckets, one for each hour. And then we're going to count by our time slices, our actors, our event types, our event names, and our results. Results being failure. So I'm going to take these 2 lines right here. Wow. So I'll grab all 3. What the heck? And I'm going to copy this. And I'm going to paste this in. Okay. Now, I'm going to comment out this last line yet we haven't talked about. Comment out a line, by the way, it's 2 forward slashes in front of the line. So now when I'm doing my count by, here I'm seeing, here's my count, and I'm seeing, here's my time slice, here's my actor, here's my event type, and my event name, and my result, and my count, okay? Now I'm going to use a top function, a top 10. I want to see my top 10 actors based on time slice, based on event type, based on result count. So now I have a listing of who my actors are that are having problems logging in. These folks are failing to log in. And so here is what our query looks like. And we are going to go ahead and add this to our dashboard. The name of this panel is going to be called our top 10 failed login attempts. So let me copy that. Go back out here. I want to click the add to dashboard button. I'm going to paste this information in. And again, I want to find the name of my dashboard, which I believe is SOC _ JWM _ 1020 for today's date. Okay. So you want to add this to your existing dashboard. And so now it's going to add it in there. Again, it says these parameters that I have already exist in the dashboard. Do I, they have the same names. Do I want them to have the same names? Yes, I do. So when I click add panel, saying I want them to have the same names, I now see here is this panel. And if I want to here, I can make this a bit bigger. Maybe make these a bit smaller for right now. Okay. All right, and we can lay this around and move it around and do the things we want to do just a little bit. But now I can see who's having problems logging in, who my top 10 user activity is here. I can see where my folks are logging in from. And as I mentioned before, if I go up here to my filter, I can filter by a specific event type. Or if I want to, I can also filter by a specific user. Gosha. The guys misspelled Gosha. Hang on a second. Oh, I see. There we go. Helps by typing the right information here. Okay, let's put a star back in there. GOSIA. There we go. Let's try that. There we go. There's Gosha. Okay. And again, I can turn this back to a star. And so I can see my data here. Okay. There we go. So as I said, we're building out this dashboard with cool information, functionality, and stuff that we might need. Any questions about this third lab? Again, a couple of quiz questions here for you. Adding a wildcard, that is to say a star, in the parameter window means it will filter out everything. Actually, it won't filter out anything at all. Wildcard will not filter anything out. It will show me everything. So that's the question. That's false. Time slice groups my incoming logs into chunks of time. That statement is true. And in the following code, pipe where not is empty actor filters out logs that do not have an actor value. And that's exactly what that code does. So if I want to, again, I basically only want to see where my actor is not empty. That's what that exclamation mark, not, is empty. I only want to see things where there's values. I want to filter out things that are empty. Okay, remove those. And that, folks, is lab number 3. Lab number 4. I want to look at an account compromise based on a brute force attack. What typically connotates a brute force attack? Somebody's trying to log in and they're failing, and then all of a sudden they succeed. Okay, that is the definition of a brute force attack. So again, we're going to create a new log query and run a 24-hour period. And we're going to take the code here in lab number 3, step number 3 here, and we are going to, sorry, lab 4, step 3. And we are going to create our new log search. And I'm going to go out here for 24 hours. And we're going to run this and make sure we get nice results. Great, wonderful, exciting. Again, it's using the same information over and over again. Again, we're going to create our parameters. We talked about that back in lab 1, how we did that. And so we're going to go in here and we're going to add, and again, if you want to go to make a new line, it's a shift enter or an alt enter, in case you'd forgotten. And again, I want to make sure I put in here as a default value a star and a star. So I get my results. And then I want to aggregate this data over time. So here I'm going to add a time slice operator, break it down into 1-hour buckets. Now, here's where things get kind of fun. I'm going to look and see if my result is equal to success. And if it's equal to success, I'm going to create a field here called success count. And if it's equal to success, I'm going to put a 1 in there. Otherwise, I'm going to put a 0 in there. Then I'm going to see if the result is equal to failure. And if it is, I'm going to create a field called failure count. And I'm going to put a 1 in failure count. Otherwise, I'm going to put a 0 in there. Then I want to sum and total up my success count and call it success. My failure count and call it failure, based on my time slice, my actor, and my event type. So what I'm doing here is I'm counting up the number of successes and the number of failures. So when I add the sum, that creates my aggregates tab. And by the way, let me see if I can, let me move this up here a little bit. So here I can see that Gosha, for example, had 59 successes, but only 2 failures. Okay, what I'm really looking for here is a high number of failures and a low number of successes. So that's the indications of a brute force attack. But it's counting the number of successes and the number of failures. Again, if I go back to my messages tab, you'll see here's my failure count. Again, here's my success count. So I can sort of see what that stuff looks like. And then what I want to do is I want to filter out where my failure is greater than 0. So I at least want to have at least 1 failure. So that's an indicative of a brute force attack, right? You got to fail before you can get in. So I'm going to filter out and say, gee, I only want to see where failure is greater than 0. Then I want to take my failure total divided by my success total times 100 to calculate a failure percentage. The higher the failure percentage, the more likely that I have a brute force attack. So again, I'm looking for high numbers of failures, low numbers of successes, which indicates a brute force attack. Okay. And so what I'm looking for here is a high number, a significantly high number, more than 2 or 5%. I'm looking for, 30%, 60%, something like that. And that's how we can determine if we have a possibility of a brute force attack. And so what we're going to do is we're going to add this panel to our dashboard. We're going to call it possible brute force attacks. And I'm going to copy this. Add this to our dashboard. Paste that in. Type in the name of our dashboard. And add it to our dashboard. Let's see if I can make this look a little bit better here. There we go. A little more symmetrical. Okay. All right. And there we have it so far. Again, some quiz questions here to kind of help you out. The underscore raw refers to the raw data for the incoming log. So in this line where we did these extraction of these fields, that statement is true. JSON field equals raw is the raw data. That's what it is. So statement number 1 is true. Statement number 2, if result matches failure count, then return a 1 to failure is an example of this statement. So in this statement, I'm going to create a field called failure count. And if my result is equal to failure, I'm going to put a 1 in there. Otherwise, I'm going to put a 0 in there. So that statement is true. Okay. And then statement number 3 here, when you use /1h, you are grouping your incoming logs into 1-hour groups for the purpose of analyzing data over time. And that statement is also true. So there we go. And that takes care of that lab. Now, lab number 5, and I'm going to warn you, lab number 5 is quite a mouthful. Okay. Lab number 5 is what we call detecting a land speed violation. And in this lab, we are going to use a bunch of functions and a bunch of code and a bunch of things. So we're going to talk about a backshift operator, a geolocation operator, an IPv4 to number, which is going to convert things to numbers, mathematical operators, all kinds of stuff. Now, I'm also going to warn you, there is a test question on the test that basically says, I want to break down this problem. And so here we have created a query flow chart and a query comments as to what's happening. And you're going to find this is going to be the answer to the question of what order do you do things? So it's going to ask you, it's a long question. It's going to ask you to arrange things in order, the right order to build out this land speed violation. And here is the right order. You're just going to drag and drop the answers and put them in the right order. Pain in the neck. Not really like the question, but it is what it is. Okay. Additionally, when I look at this information here, you can see here, I've got lots of code here. What I'm going to do to save time and to be a little bit more efficient, rather than breaking this down code chunk by code chunk, I'm going to take the final results. So I'm going to take this final query right here, and I'm going to copy it. And I'm going to paste it. And I'm going to walk through this code. So this one is going to be kind of the mother of all examples. So let me paste this code in. Let me change this to 24 hours. And again, I've got an actor here. It's trying to find my lovely actor there. Put my star in there. Now, before I run this and confuse the heck out of you, let's talk about what this code is really trying to tell me. So in fact, let me see if I can magnify it up here just a little bit, make it a little easier for you to read. So we're starting out with our CloudTrail data. We're grabbing the field called username, and we're going to call it user, or actually we'll call it actor eventually. Okay. Then we've got some comments. These, again, those are familiar with languages like C or C++ or whatever. This is an example of a comment. /* blah, 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 //, that's a comment. So we try to put comments in here to explain what we're doing. So again, we're basically doing a parameter here to match an actor. Then we're going through the IP address in the message and seeing, is it a public IP address? Okay, we only want to deal with public IP addresses. Private IP addresses we don't want to see. So we're filtering things and we're only allowing and deleting those messages that don't have a public IP address. Then we're going to use the min function. And the min function, if you think about it, in my logs over this 24-hour period of time, I'm going to have a whole bunch of log entries based on a user, based on an IP address. And I want to find the first log message within my 24-hour period based on that user and based on an IP address. Because then I'm going to go to the next message and the next message and the next message and figure out where they've been logging in from. So I want to try to separate out my users, and then by user, I want to see all the different IP addresses and the times that they logged in. So I'm breaking this up by my user. I'm breaking this up by my login time. This plus denotes I want to see my login time in ascending order. That's what that plus means. It's another way of, instead of typing in ASC, you can use the plus sign. Now, just for fun, I'm going to take the rest of this code and I'm going to comment it out. If you want to comment out a single line, as you know, I can type in, you can type in, we can type in 2 forward slashes. But if you want to type in a whole bunch of lines, I'm going to show you a trick. If in your Windows keyboard, you hold down your Alt key. If you're on a Mac keyboard, if you hold down your Option key, your cursor will change to a plus sign. And then you can drag a line all the way down the bottom here, dragging a line all the way down. And whatever you type in this case, 2 forward slashes, it'll automatically then comment out those lines. And so now I can run this. And when I run this, let me shrink this back down here. Bear with me a moment. So I can see my results. Okay. So here I'm getting my IP address. I'm getting my login times. Yeah, that's what I want to get. Okay. Just keep track of my users and my login times. Now I need to do some math. And again, I need to probably zoom in so you can see what's going on. And so now what I want to do here is I want to convert the IP address to an IP decimal number, a value, okay? And then I'm going to do a backshift operator. The backshift operator is looking by user, going back to the previous IP address. So remember, we found the minimum user, the minimum first entry where user logged in. Now I'm going to use the backshift operator to go that same user and find their previous IP address. I'm also going to use that backshift operator to find out when they logged in. So they logged in, and I'm going to call that previous login. So I have their current login time. I have their previous login time. I have their current IP address. I have their previous IP address. And then I'm going to basically do some math here. Now, where I can't go back, where there's no backshift operator, I want to filter that out. So if I've got a user who's only logged in once in 24 hours, I'm going to filter that user out. That's what I'm doing there. Now, this stuff is just simply math. What I'm going to do is I am going to do a little math calculation. Remember, I created something here where I took my IP address and I calculated it to a decimal value. Okay. Well, this is going to convert it back to an octet, back to an IP address. That's what this calculation does. So I'm going to basically calculate this back to a previous IP address. And just for fun, let me go ahead and run this so you all can see what's going on. Bear with me a moment. It's waiting for it to run. Okay. So here I found a user. Here I found their current IP address. This is the time that they logged in at. I basically made it a big number. This is their IP decimal number. I've taken this and converted it to a decimal. Then I'm going back to their previous IP address, the previous IP address that they had, the previous login they had, and I'm going to convert this previous IP address to the original IP address that they've got. So that's what I'm basically doing in that math statement. I'm converting it back to octets. Shrink this back in. And let me scroll down here a little bit. Okay. So now what I want to do is I want to do a lookup on their original IP address. And I want to get the latitude and the longitude of the original IP address. I'm going to call the latitude lat1. I'm going to call the longitude long1. I'm also going to get the country. Then I'm going to go to the previous IP address. I'm going to do a geo lookup on that. I'm going to call that lat2 and long2. And again, I'm going to filter out where I don't have a lat1 or a long1, just in case I only have a person who's logged in from one location. And where I don't have a long2. So if I couldn't look up the values for long1, lat1, or like that, I want to filter those out. Now, what we're going to do here is we're going to use something called the Haverstein formula. If I go back here to our lab, and if I look up here, what the Haverstein function does is it calculates a distance between two different latitude and longitudes in kilometers, distance in kilometers. So the Haverstein formula takes in a latitude, a longitude, another latitude and longitude, calculates the distance in kilometers between that. And that's what the Haverstein formula does, the Haverstein function does. So we are going to calculate the distance. And I want to calculate the speed or the time since they logged in. So remember, I have the time they logged in originally, and I have the previous time they logged in. So I'm going to take my current login time minus my previous login time, and I'm going to divide it by 3,600,000. And that's going to give me my login time in hours. Then I'm going to take the distance in kilometers divided by my login time, the difference of login time, and that's going to give me my apparent velocity. And then I'm going to arbitrarily decide, first of all, I'll make sure I don't have any apparent velocities greater than 0. I want to make sure I filter out the zeros. Okay. And I'm going to set a value as a suspicious speed. So I'm going to say a apparent velocity of greater than 500 is a suspicious speed. And I am going to look at everybody's velocity greater than 500. Because that's obviously an indicator of, that's a lot of distance to cover in a relatively short period of time. So let me go ahead and run this. And let you guys see what it looks like so far. Then all we got to do is clean it up. So down here again, I have my original IP address, the login time, the IP address converted to a decimal, their previous login time, excuse me, the previous IP address, the previous login. Now I have, again, broken down into octets. There is the previous IP address. Here's the country name that they logged in from. Here's my latitude and longitude 1, the country name, my latitude and longitude 2, my distance in kilometers, my login distance, my apparent velocity, and now I'm looking to see if it's greater than 500. So I'm filtering and only showing me there where these values are greater than 500. Okay. And then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clean this up a little bit. So let me go ahead and zoom in here one more time. And let me format this a little bit. So what I want to do is I want to concatenate my IP address, the current IP address, and the previous IP address with a space. So I want to see the two IP addresses we have together. And when I look at the country name, if the country name is, for the first country name and the second country name are the same country names, I only want to display it once. If it's not, then I want to display two country names separated by a comma. Then I'm going to use the fields command. Now, I mentioned the fields command earlier. The fields command lets me specify what fields I want to display. You may recall I had a whole bunch of fields down there, including octets and everything else. I'm deciding what fields I want to display. I only want to see the user, the IP addresses, the countries, the distance in kilometers, the login time delta per hours, and the apparent velocity in kilometers per hour. And again, I'm going to filter and make sure I don't have any null users. And I also don't want to have a divide by 0 situation. You may recall I did this where I divided by my velocity per hour. And so if I have a situation where I have an infinity, or I think I divide by 0 problem, I want to filter that out as well. And then I'm going to sort by my velocity per hour. And so when I run this now, now I'm going to see these situations where somebody has covered a long distance period in a relatively short period of time. So here I have a user. There are the two IP addresses they were from. Here are the two countries they were from. Here is the distance in kilometers. And here's the time difference. Now, in the case of, bear with me a moment. Okay, I don't have an example here, but where there's only one country, they logged in from, say, Japan, and they logged in second time from Japan, it would only display Japan once. Okay, but now I have information of who's logging in a 24-hour period of time, who's going from two different IP addresses, which represent two different countries. And, is that possible? Is it possible that they VPN'd in and somehow got sent to Japan or Brazil? Yeah, it's possible. But it's also possible that they, somebody logged in from their home country and then somebody else logged in as them from a different country. And so that might be suspicious activity. And that's our land speed violation. And as you can tell, this is the hardest of the bunch. And again, I can take this and I can add this panel to our dashboard. So I am going to call this land speed violation. Add it to my dashboard. Add it here. Get to my dashboard. And there we go, another dashboard. And I'm going to add the panel, right? Even though I've got actor in there. Okay. Please, is it possible that velocity can be high because it's using a VPN? Yes, it is possible. So Kosi, you're absolutely correct. When a user logs in, from a specific IP address from, my case, the United States, East Coast of the United States, it is possible that I VPN someplace in that may direct me to another country. You are absolutely correct. That is very possible. So that's something we've got to, we got to investigate, but it's important that we know that. So Kosi, I hope I'm answering your question. Yeah. Thanks for asking. So yes, it is possible that this is not as malicious and bad as it looks. This could be a, user had to VPN in and got redirected to a different IP address, which took them on their merry way. So yes. Okay. But you, as a security analyst for your company, have the due diligence to make sure that that's the case, right? That is part of the job description. Your job is to protect your company's information. Okay. All right, so here we go. A couple of quiz questions here for you. Geo lookup receives an IP address and returns a location. That's true. The Haversine formula is used to convert octets to decimals. No, that is false. The Haversine formula converts latitudes and longitudes to kilometers distance is what it does. That's false. And then 3, land speed violations allow you to detect suspicious user activity. Yes, that is true. Okay. Now we've got 3 more exercises to do, and the good news is they're fairly quick and fairly easy. So here in lab 6, we want to talk about using those search parameters. So in lab 6, what we want to do is we want to show you how we created that lookup table. So you may recall back here in my dashboard, back here in my queries, right? Actually, let me go back to my first query here. I could get rid of this event type and it gave me a pick list, right? That's because we created a lookup table. How did that lookup table get created? Well, you may recall we went in here and changed it and told it to use a lookup table, this shared / event types. So how do we do this? Well, in lab 6, we're going to talk about that. So here in lab 6, I'm going to take this code and I'm going to go out here and I'm going to create a new query for a 24-hour period. Changes 24 hours. And I'm going to look at my CloudTrail data and I'm going to extract my username and call it actor. I'm going to count by my actor. So let me comment out these last 2 lines for right now so that we can see this. So in the last 24 hours, I can see here all my users are and how many times they've logged in. Now, what I want to do is I want to save this off as a table, as a lookup table. And I really don't need this count. All I really want is the list of my users. So we're going to use the field statement again, and we're going to tell it to delete the count, minus count. And that gets rid of my count. So now all I have is a listing of my users. And then here, I'm going to use the save command. And here we've got to do some modifications. So I'm going to change this just a little bit. So it says I'm going to save it to my shared folder, my shared library. And I want to add here my initials. And I'm also going to add today's date, 10/20. And let me get rid of this. Okay. And so now when I run this, I get this message that says, wait a second, you're not running a query to see a query. You're running a query to save a query. Is that what you want to do? Do you want to run this query? And yes, so now what this does, this builds my query, this builds this. And if I want to, I could schedule this as we talked about yesterday under save as. I could schedule this to run every 24 hours, right? I could schedule this to automatically run an update every 24 hours. But now I have this shared directory here that I can use, and I can go back to any one of my little queries here where I have actor. I could modify that parameter setting, and I could say I want to use this lookup, and the lookup file that I want again is shared /JWM. And then here is the one I created just now, 1020 actor table. And if I look here, there's a field in there called actor. And I can select that actor field, and I can save this. So now in this query, when I get rid of my star, I see my pick list of who my actors are, and I can filter it for that specific actor. So that is how this happens. Obviously, I grabbed a bad example here. Let me grab Ankit. I know Ankit's probably a better example. Ankit will show up. Okay, these are the places that Ankit has logged in from. Oops. Excuse me. Okay. And that is how we add that parameter in. So we actually write a query that gives us a listing of all of our actors, or all of our event types, or all of or whatever. And then we go in and manage the properties here to use that saved query. And that's what Lab 6 is all about. It says to display a lookup table, I use the command P is CP. No, CP is used to copy. That's a Unix command. Search that statement's false. Search parameters allow me to pivot quickly through any metadata value. That's true. And then I can use the save operator to create a lookup table. That is true as well. So we're almost there. Almost done. So one of the goals here that we had for this class when we put it together was obviously to tell a story and to build something together. And what we'd love for you to be able to do is to take it back with you. We'd like you to take this dashboard and incorporate it in your environment. Now, the only way this is going to work is if you have CloudTrail data. So maybe you have CloudTrail data, maybe you don't. If you do have CloudTrail data, we're going to show you how you can export out this dashboard, and you can import it into your environment and use it. Okay. So how do we do this? Again, what's Lab 7 going to do for us? In Lab 7, what I want to do is take this dashboard that's saved, right? Remember, my dashboard here is saved in my shared folder. Here it is right here. You'll notice on my options here, on my options, remember we did share yesterday. Well, one of the options we have is we can export this. So I'm going to choose to export this, and they're going to say this is going to export this as JSON. So I am going to take this and I'm going to download this. And it's going to create for me a lovely JSON file. And since I'm on a Mac, I'm going to say, hey, show this in my Finder, kind of like your Windows Explorer. And then I can open this up in a text editor. So I'm going to open this up with Visual Studio, okay? Visual Studio Code. I want to open it up in a text editor. And there's a reason why. Again, this, all the dashboard and all the information and the query and everything is all written in JSON. And there's a field here called query string. In fact, it's written in here. For every panel, we've got a field called query string. And this is the actual query that makes up your query string. The problem is that we called our source category in our training environment for our CloudTrail data, lab/AWS/CloudTrail. You probably called your source category for CloudTrail something different. And so my message is, and actually, I'm sorry, hang on a second. You guys can't see this. Let me share up my screen again. Sorry. I just realized I was only sharing my browser. There we go. So anyway, I downloaded the file. I opened the file up in my text editor. Sorry about that. And when I open it up, what I want to do is I want to do a search and replace on this metadata tag. And you want to do a search and replace so that it has your source category information here. What you called your CloudTrail data source, whatever you called it. So you're going to do a search and replace in this file. Then you're going to save this file again. Then you can go into your company's Sumo Logic environment. And in your company's Sumo Logic environment, if you go up here to your personal folder and you go up here to these three dots, you'll see that you can import things. And you can give this thing a name. SOC dashboard, and you can paste in the code. So just for fun here, let me do a Control A to select everything, Control C to copy everything. Let me do a Control V here to paste everything. And so I could then save this and then import this into your environment after you change that source category name. And that basically is what we're trying to get you to do in lab number 7. Now, there is one other thing that you have to do. You may recall we had lookup tables for the event type that we saw in lab number 1. We also, in previous lab, created one for actor. You got to recreate those event tables so that they're part of your environment. So these are the two queries running for 24 hours that generate your list of your actors and your event types. And so you're going to run those, and you can schedule those to run every 24 hours. And then go ahead and import this thing in, and off to the races you go. Okay. Now, when you export, it exports things in a JSON format. And when you import it, it wants it in JSON format. So here in the quiz, it says exporting outputs JSON format. True, absolutely true. Question number 2, before inputting, I must change the pointers to my data using some sort of a visual text editor, some sort of a text editor. Yes, that statement is also true. Because again, we called ours lab/AWS/CloudTrail. I don't know what you called yours. Assuming you have CloudTrail data. And then after importing, I cannot share my dashboard with others. Well, hopefully you remember from yesterday, once I import anything or once I've got something in here, I can always share it with others. So that's, you can share it with others. That statement is false. Okay. And that is lab number 7. Now, little lab number 8. What lab number 8 is showing you here, I realize I'm going to close on time because I'm already 15 minutes into your exam time, but give me a few minutes to wrap this up. Lab number 8 is a good example here of using CrowdStrike data. We have a partnership with CrowdStrike. So there is a URL here that you can use. Bear with me. I'm going to find it here in just a second. I'm going to use a lookup. So here's my lookup. There's my lookup statement. And what happens is that we're going to pass in the IP address again. This time we're going to go to this URL, which is CrowdStrike. We have a relationship with CrowdStrike, which allows you to take an IP address and you can see the kind of information that CrowdStrike can provide for you. What kind of malicious confidence is it? Is that a known enemy, bad person, that sort of thing? And you can look that information up. Just for fun here, bear with me a moment while I go out here and find, there we go, CrowdStrike lookup table. If I click on this, threat intel, quick analysts, again, I can see that I can see the kind of information off of my CrowdStrike. In fact, if I look at my threat intel, frequently asked questions, you have, because you have Sumo Logic, we maintain this connection for you. and you can take your IP addresses and send them to CrowdStrike. You can only send the IP address. You can also look it up by URL, by domain, by email address, whatever. And what you're looking up here and what CrowdStrike's going to tell you is if these are known actors and threats and stuff like that. So are these known and recognized actors based on a specific country or based on a non-state actor? Are they high threat confidence? So you can look up IP addresses to see if some bad actors are trying to infiltrate or play with your environment. And that's basically what this does. And if you wanted to, you can take the code in Lab 8 and you can copy it, you can paste it and run it and play with it and have yourself a good time. But again, one of the more powerful features is that normally if you want to do a subscription to CrowdStrike, it costs you thousands of dollars. Well, guess what? You can do it through us and save yourself those thousands of dollars. Now, what questions have you with regards to this course? What questions have you? Make sure you guys are all enabled here for Mike, so you guys can talk. Good. And here's what we want to do. Again, you guys are logged into the training environment. I want you to log out of the training environment because I want you to log into an environment where you've got your name, first name and last name. So we want to log you out of here. We want you to log into your company's Sumo Logic environment. And again, for those of you who weren't with me yesterday, if you don't have a company environment to log into, let me know and I will give you a URL where you can sign up for a demo account. And many of you who were with us yesterday, it took the exams. You will want to go into the Home tab here. And in the Home tab here, you're going to click on Certification. And here under Get Certified, you can click on that. By the way, one thing I wanted to mention to you, in all of these areas, we also have self-paced courses. So, for example, those of you who saw my little Cloud Sim presentation this morning, they're kind of chomping at the bit to play with Cloud Sim. You can go into this Cloud Sim tile and you can actually take some of these self-paced courses, okay, if you want to. So here's the Cloud Sim administration class. Here's the Cloud Sim fundamentals class. These are self-paced courses that that you can take. Sorry about that. All right. What we want to do is we want to take our exam. So if I scroll in here and look at these tiles, you'll see there's a tile here called security. You probably need to change this and give it a better name. But under security, here we have our cloud security monitoring and analytics exam in English. Here we have it in Japanese. Now, again, if you just watch with your eyes for just a second, humor me for a moment. I'm going to go into here. And I want to point something out again to you to make it easy. Again, you'll click the registration button and boom, you're registered. Piece of cake. Then you can click on before you start. This exam only has 22 questions. It doesn't have 30. 22 questions, you got 16 minutes to complete it. And a passing score is 70, not 75. So we're trying to help you out here. Again, the exams are open note, open book, open slides. And yes, please ask myself or Alex. We'll gladly try to help you. When I click next and I start going into the exam, I'll start seeing there's my hour timer. And as I start to scroll down and start seeing questions, my timer will start. There it goes. And so I can start going through these questions. Why did the schedule view query and the threat intel run in seconds compared to something I didn't point out? The reason, if I schedule a view, if I schedule a query to run, what happens is that it uses pre-aggregated data. And so if I use a scheduled view, that's why it runs so much faster. And then if I wanted to modify a query to alert on an outlier, I want to modify this to alert. So what I want to do is I want to basically create an alert here. I want to schedule it. Actually, hold on a second. Yeah, actually, I think I want to do a little that option right there. Bottom line is I've answered 2 questions. I'm going to go down here. I'm going to score it. I did not pass because I only answered 2 questions, but I can see here what questions I got right, what questions I got wrong. Don't know why I got them wrong, but I can see that. But here's the big thing. Don't ever forget to hit that submit button once you pass this. So hit the submit button to get credit for the exam. This exam is obviously harder than yesterday's exam. The first couple exams are fairly easy. These more advanced classes, these become a bit more challenging. However, that being said, if you get stuck on a question, ask. Don't assume that, we've covered everything and all that. So feel free to ask. We'll help you out as much as we can. Don't forget to click the submit button. Are there any questions, ladies and gentlemen? All right. I am going to stop my sharing. I am going to stop the recording. Before I do that, though, let me also do one last thing. Turn on my camera. And again, on behalf of myself and everyone at Sumo, we want to thank you for spending the last few hours with us. And again, you got to have an hour for this exam once you start it, and I'll be here for it. But hopefully we'll see you in the class again real soon. If there's anything we can do to help you, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself or Alex. Alex, anything you want to add, sir?
I just wish everyone good luck in the exam.
There you go. So, okay. Somebody mentions that their Get Certified link doesn't take me to the certification page. Yep. So let me share my screen one more time and walk you through that. So just humor me for a moment and I'll show you how to get around that. So when you log into your environment and you go in here to click on home and do certification and get certified, when you click on get certified, it probably takes you here. It doesn't take you to the LMS. To get around that, you're going to click on, again, this navigation pane. If it's not open, open it up. You're going to click on help. You're going to click on community. And what you're going to see when you click on community is a pop-up's going to appear. Doesn't appear on my screen because I did it a year or so ago, but you're going to get a pop-up that says we need to verify your email. There's a button on there. You're going to click on that button, and then it's going to send you in about a minute an email. In that body of that email, there's another button. When you click on that button, then this problem will go away. What it is, we need your permission to move you from one environment in Sumo Logic to another environment. We need your blessing to do that, okay? And so that's how we force the issue. So again, you're going to go into your main menu. You're going to go into community. That pop-up will appear. You click on the button that says allow verify email or whatever. You're going to find that email. You're going to click on the button in that email, and then this problem goes away. Then you will be able to go into here, click here, and it will take you into the learning management system. So I hope that answers your question. Now let me stop my sharing and stop my recording. And again, anything else that happens or any other questions, feel free to let me know.